Welcome to Workplace Wednesday. I'm Erin Kidd, a Director in the Labour and Employment team in the Squire Patton Boggs Sydney office. The Fair Work Commission's recent decision in AMWU and AWU and ASC Proprietary Limited trading as Australian Submarine Corporation has confirmed that an employer can introduce a mandatory vaccination policy even in the absence of a public health order requiring mandatory vaccination in respect of the employer's industry or the location in which the employer operates. So what was this case about? In December last year, the AMWU and the AWU applied to the Fair Work Commission to deal with a dispute under the ASC Enterprise Agreement 2021. The respondent to the dispute was ASC Proprietary Limited, trading as the Australian Submarine Corporation, or ASC, who had introduced a requirement that employees and contractors be double vaccinated against COVID-19 before entering the worksite. To confine the dispute, ASC and the unions agreed that the central controversy concerned two questions. The first was, had ASC met the consultation requirements prescribed by the agreement in respect of its vaccination policy? And the second was, would an instruction from ASC that employees covered by the agreement comply with the vaccination policy be a lawful and reasonable direction? In respect of the first question, whether ASC had met the consultation requirements prescribed by the agreement, the Fair Work Commission found in favour of ASC in answering the question, yes. The union submitted that ASC failed to meet its consultation obligations under both the agreement and South Australia's Work Health and Safety Act. They submitted that the decision to introduce the vaccination mandate was a definitive decision made without consultation, and in any event, any consultation occurred only on matters of the implementation of the mandate and not the mandate itself. This failure to consult, submitted the unions, rendered the vaccination mandate unlawful and therefore unreasonable. ASC submitted that it had conducted a process of consultation on both the policy and its planned implementation. ASC also submitted, amongst other things, that the industrial and legislative consultation obligations do not extend to an obligation to agree with positions put, and that it acted lawfully in maintaining its view after consultation that it was appropriate to implement the mandatory vaccination policy. Noting that ASC had a predisposed view to the appropriateness of its decision to introduce the vaccination mandate, the Fair Work Commission nevertheless held that the consultation process still had the capacity to inform and impact ASC's view to the appropriateness of the decision. This was evidenced by changes having been made to the policy first proposed, including that ASC would no longer retain vaccination certificates or medical exemptions, and that there would be a show cause process for non-compliant employees, and that ASC had facilitated an opportunity for health and safety representatives and others involved in the consultation process to review ASC's risk assessment and develop one of their own. In respect of the second question, whether an instruction to comply with the vaccination policy be lawful and reasonable, the Fair Work Commission also found in the affirmative and therefore in favour of ASC. The policy was held to be lawful on the basis that ASC materially complied with its consultation obligations under both the agreement and WHS legislation, and that the policy and any outcome for breaching it was not unlawful under the Privacy Act. The Fair Work Commission also found that the mandatory vaccination policy was reasonable, despite the unions having argued it was unnecessary because of other control methods, such as mask wearing, social distancing, and rapid antigen testing, which it said were sufficient to manage the health and safety risks presented by COVID-19. Given the work on submarines includes work in confined spaces where social distancing is not always possible, that non-compliance with mask wearing occurs from time to time, and rapid antigen testing would only occur weekly, the Fair Work Commission found other control methods, whilst important, were not adequate to mitigate ASC's assessment of risk. The union's position had also argued that the vaccination mandate was unreasonable on the basis that it was disproportionate to the current risks presented by COVID-19, particularly given matters such as the increased vaccination rates of the general population, the Omicron variant being a less severe variant of COVID-19, and the general easing of public health restrictions by government. ASC, on the other hand, submitted that the opening of borders and increased risk of transmissibility of Omicron strengthened, not diminished, the reasonableness of its mandatory vaccination policy. The Fair Work Commission said that whilst the existence of a government mandate requiring vaccination to enter a high-risk setting may weigh in favour of the complementary policy mandate at that setting being reasonable, the converse is not true. Rather, the reasonableness of an employer's policy proposing a vaccination mandate is to be objectively considered on its merits and not be burdened by a presumption of unreasonableness simply because government authorities have not declared that worksite to be a high-risk setting. The Fair Work Commission therefore determined that the mandatory vaccination policy has a logical and understandable basis in that it deals with the management of a real and present risk to health and safety. The implementation of the mandatory vaccination requirement was not considered to be disproportionate as a workplace health and safety response to the risks presented by COVID-19. So what does this decision mean for employers? Well, in light of this decision, employers should have comfort that vaccination policies made outside the bounds of a vaccination mandate issued by government will be considered lawful and reasonable, so long as a consultation process has occurred as required under the terms of any industrial instrument and/or work health and safety laws, and so long as the policy is reasonable having regard to the risks identified in a health and safety risk assessment. Thanks for joining us and stay tuned for our next edition.